Hello, hello, and welcome to tonight's My Macular and Me webinar. I'm Julie Silvestri, I'm the Chief Executive of the Macular Society, and as ever, we have a very special guest tonight, and I hope you'll have lots of questions for her. So please use the chat function at the bottom of the screen to put your question forward, and as usual, we will get to as many as we possibly can after we've heard from our guest. We very often on these talk about the research going on to find new drug therapies for macular degeneration. But there's actually also a lot of interest in technological solutions to macular disease as well. Some projects have even tried to bypass the eye completely, pictures from a camera direct to the visual cortex in the brain. Another very interesting area is the use of special implanted lenses in the eye, and that's going to be the subject of tonight's talk. There are several versions of these lenses available on the market, and some have been shown to work fairly well for some people. Others have been much more controversial. But that's the subject of tonight's talk, all about the latest news on implantable lenses for macular degeneration in particular. So our guest tonight is Professor Julie Silvestri. Now, Julie is the Clinical Director for Ophthalmic Services at the Belfast Health and Social Care Trust. She's also an Honorary Professor at Public Health at Queen's University Belfast and co-leads the Clinical Research Network. Her interests are AMD, as well as inherited retinal conditions, and of course, intraocular magnifying devices. Julie, welcome to My Macular and Me. Thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight. It's lovely to see you. Your phone is picking up quite a lot of breath from you, so you might want to just move it a tiny fraction further away, but that's, yeah, okay, that's great. Julie, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I'm going to hand over to you straight away for you to tell us a bit more about the work that you've been doing and the trial that you've been working on for one particular lens. Julie, thank you.
Thank you very much. Kathy, can you still hear me? Yeah, is that okay? Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the invitation, and it's a great honor to speak to the group. I see there's a good number on, so welcome everyone. As Kathy has said, I've two passions really for my research. One is inherited retinal degenerations, but then also work on these implantable lenses for macular degeneration. And I have been at this, I suppose, quite a while, so I do have some experience. Why, some are good, why it maybe just hasn't taken off as we might have hoped. So I have a few slides, and I apologize to those who can't see them, but they are fairly basic. It just really keeps me on track, and for those who can see them, they might be helpful. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is really 4 areas. First, is there a need for intraocular magnifiers for these telescopes? I'm going to go through how these magnifiers actually work, review some of the advantages and disadvantages, and then just share my experience at the Belfast Trust with 3 devices, which we will look at shortly. So moving on to point 2, how do these, well, first, sorry, I've jumped on there. Is there a need for the magnifying aids? And despite, all the treatments that we have, and things have moved on a lot, there are 200 million individuals with AMD worldwide. And at the moment, the only treatment really is, as you know, for the wet type, although we are hopeful that something will be coming along fairly soon for the atrophic or the dry type of AMD. And despite the anti-VEGF therapies, which are revolutionary, really, I'm old enough to remember when, unfortunately, there was nothing. So it has been truly amazing. But there are still some patients who don't respond, patients who have lost vision before the treatments. And then there are the patients who have inherited retinal degenerations, such as Stargardt's disease, who also have macular disease, who may benefit from these devices. So I think there is a need really for these devices. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how they actually work. And I'm just showing on the screen an eyeball, and what it's showing is the word cat written upside down, actually, which I hadn't even noticed. It was pointed out to me earlier. But of course, it's upside down because that's how the brain receives it. And what this is showing is how the word cat is seen on the macula in someone who doesn't have any visual impairment. Now, if you move on, and there's macular degeneration, and I've just put a dark red spot on the center of the word cat, and which is known as a scotoma or the blind spot. And what you can see is actually hardly anything of the word cat, just a little bit of the T on one side and the C on the other, and that's because the blind spot is blocking it out. So what happens when you put in one of these telescopes? And the next slide shows one of these, the IMT, and this is the particular telescope in the center of the pupil of the eye. And what it shows is that it magnifies the view significantly. And in fact, what it does is it magnifies the word that you're looking at, cat, so that the little black spot or the scotoma, it stays the same size because it's in the eye, whereas the word cat is magnified 3 times. And really, the only bit of the word of the letters that's been blocked out now is the middle of the A. So it's possible to read the word. So that's how they work in principle. They magnify what you're looking at, the scene or the word, and that means that the blind spot in the eye is only taking up a smaller part of the word. Doesn't get rid of the blind spot; it's always there, but it becomes much less obvious. And just to show here, one of the trade-offs of having some of these magnifiers, and not all of them, but some of them actually will magnify the center part. And on the right, there is a gentleman's face with little bits missing, and that's because it's magnified. But those who can see it will see that the peripheral view is very, very restricted. So there's increase and improvement in the center, but it is at the expense of the peripheral view. And that's why some of these devices can only be put into one eye, because you couldn't walk about with the eye that has the IMT in it. You just wouldn't have the peripheral vision, and that's where the other eye comes in. So that's kind of basically how they work, and they some have more magnification than others, and I'll talk about that because that is important, because depending on the level of vision remaining in the eye, it is important to get the best type of magnification. So advantages and disadvantages. So because the device is in the eye, it reduces, there's no sort of relative movement between what is being read and and if you have a handheld magnifier, you have to move the magnifier as along, and there's a sort of mismatch between that and the eye. And with the device in the eye, it provides natural scanning, so it's more intuitive and natural. It also improves the visual field, and one of the most frustrating things for handheld magnifiers is that it reduces the more magnification, obviously it reduces what you can see, and because it's in the eye, it improves that. So in theory, what is visible is more. Some patients find it difficult, if they have arthritis or Parkinson's, to use the handheld magnifier, and cosmetically, obviously, the intraocular magnifier is better. Disadvantages. Um, some people find that if they have one of the more magnifying implants like the IMT, which magnifies the whole visual field. So if you can imagine that you're looking out of one eye at a cup, and it's the size of a normal cup, and then you open the other eye, which is the magnifying eye, and the cup is 3 times the size. And what happens then if you have both eyes open, it can be different. You really can't use both eyes together again, because the magnification difference of that implant is very good, but is great. So people have to be able to switch from one eye to the other. And the IMT is a great device. I've put in 8 or so, and I haven't taken any out. They've been great, but it depends very much on whether the person who has the implant can manage to use one eye independently from the other. Some people get it, no problem, and other people have difficulty with it. And that is the problem sometimes of, picking the right implant for the right person. So other disadvantages, uh, they are generally safe. The devices themselves have been tried and tested. So it's really whether it is the right device for the person, and also, whether it can be sort of used and used comfortably. So what we're going to do now is talk a little bit about the actual devices that we have experience with. And I have experience with 3 devices myself, and I'm going to just really confine myself to those. The first one is the IMT, which is the intraocular miniaturized telescope, and that has been around a long time, really since about 2003 was probably the first trial, and it looks like this on the screen. It is a glass cylinder, 4 millimeters in length, very sturdy device and quite a large device. And it goes in where the cataract has been removed. So it has to go in an eye that hasn't had cataract surgery. Goes into the eye, sits very, very nicely. And there have been 2 very good trials on this, one in the US in 2003, and it offered it to both AMD and Stargardt's patients. Not so many Stargardt's patients, but there were a number in the trial. And then there was a follow-up trial in the UK, which was for AMD. So how did it work? And it did actually work very well. 90% of patients who had the IMT in the UK trial got at least 2 lines improvement in vision, and nearly 70% got 3 lines of improvement. So the magnification did work. It was very safe. There were some patients had some difficulty with the cornea, which is a clear part at the front of the eye, but we're talking 2%, 2 in 100, and that is because the device was quite big. Um, but it did really work well. It got FDA approval in 2010. And along with the visual results, there was also quite extensive testing done on did it make a difference to patients. And there is, some of you will have heard of the VFQ score, which looks at, activities of daily living and do things improve. And it scored very, very well. I list out the things that it improved: general vision, near activities, distance activities, social functioning. People were less dependent, improved mental health, improved role difficulties, and improved color vision. So it did score really, really very highly. Obviously didn't improve peripheral vision because that is one of the things it cuts out, and didn't allow patients to drive, although in the US apparently there are states that will allow people to drive with the IMT. So it did really, really well. Then it came here and we had 3 sites, and it was for AMD patients. And again, most patients did well. Interestingly, the patients in the UK were not as pleased as the patients in the US, just in general. And, after a lot of analysis, what we thought it was, and this is the difficulty, it's all, we're never sure. In the American trial, the implants were put into the worst seeing eye. And that is because it was an earlier trial design and it was for safety as well. So patients had their worst eye implanted and did really, really well. So the idea was that in the UK, it would be tried, the trial would be to implant it in the better seeing eye, which hopefully would give even better, vision. And it did, but patients didn't like it. And we just don't know if, reducing the peripheral vision in the better eye just wasn't the best thing to do. And that's the tricky thing is knowing which eye to implant these devices in. Um, is it the better seeing eye? Is it the dominant eye? It could be that the better seeing eye was the dominant eye, and it is all very, very difficult. So vision improvements were good, but people in the UK just weren't as happy. And I think it was because it was placed into the better, potentially better seeing eye. But we don't know. So that's what I think that's part of why, these things haven't moved on maybe as quickly as we thought. It's just the selection of the right device for the right person. It is time consuming and it is tricky. So that's the IMT. Great piece of kit, works really well. Just getting it into the right person, and there is quite a bit of work to be done and training after the event, etc. The other problem with this is that you can't actually, there's a simulator which one holds up, but you can't walk about with that at home, obviously. So it's hard to know before the surgery how it's going to be in terms of acceptability. So that's the IMT, and I'll talk a wee bit more about that later. This next one, I spent so much time on designing a trial. This is the ORI lens, and it was made by the same person who made the IMT. And as I said, part of the problem with the IMT is it cuts down on peripheral vision. So this device was made, it's a reflecting telescope. It's got a mirror in it, and the optics are so that it's much smaller, so it's easier to get in, but it also doesn't reduce the peripheral vision. So I thought this was very attractive. You get the same magnification as with the IMT, but it doesn't have the side effect of reducing the vision. And this was my first lady. And for those who can see the slides, her daughter brought her in and she says, "My mother looks bionic." And I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, of course, it's a mirror. So that actually could be seen." And I hadn't actually thought of that. It was glittering. So again, good level of visual improvement in the number of patients I put in. But this this device had the problem that there were a lot of halos and glare from the mirror. So probably not my favorite. It did magnify, but I had to take out a couple of these devices because the patients just couldn't tolerate the halos and the glare from it. So possibly not. I haven't heard much about the Ori lens really since. And then just going to move on to the current study, which was kindly funded by the Macular Society. And there are a couple of attractive things about this lens. We've called it the MagView study, but the lens is, I'll just call it the SML Shariati macular lens. Shariati is Gabriel Shariati, who's an ophthalmologist in Germany. So the SML is entirely much more simple. The devices I've shown before are complex, they're expensive. The IMT was £15,000 at the time. Um, the SML costs roughly £1,000 at the moment, so a lot less. So what I liked about it and why I set up the trial really was it is a very simple lens. Those of you who've had cataract surgery will know a lens goes in when the cataract has been taken away. It's a fairly simple lens for distance. And this SML lens is based on that. And on the screen, if you can see it there, there's a very simple lens and it has a little yellow button in the middle. And what this does is it magnifies only for reading in the center. That whole area around the yellow is just plain lens. So it doesn't affect vision. And that was very appealing to me because at least even if it didn't really help, with the central vision, at least it wasn't doing any harm. It wasn't putting people off balance and having the whole difficulty with the peripheral vision magnification. It was also very simple to get in through a 2 millimeter incision, just folds into on top of the lens that's there, and is also therefore suitable for people who have had cataract surgery, whereas the other one wasn't. So we were keen to, and this lens has had quite a bit of, quite a number have been put in, and there have been a few publications, and it does seem to work very well. Most patients will get an improvement of at least 3 lines. And in fact, there was a study done by Gabriel Sharios that did show that most patients got at least 4 lines improvement, which was really very good for reading. It's a small lens, goes in simply. The learning curve for the surgeon is very small because it's just like a normal intraocular lens. And the other nice thing for the ophthalmologist point of view is you can look around the central. You'd hardly notice the central button was there at all whenever you look in. So there is a really excellent view of the retina because, as you know, AMD can progress and you do want to be able to see. So it was very appealing. And what we thought we would do is we would put it in after cataract surgery rather than at the same time to see what the true improvement was with the device. Because if you take the cataract out, put it in, you really never know, would it have been as good without the device or not? So we thought we would do the cataract surgery and then put it in, or put it into people who had already had cataract surgery. So we've been doing that. And then the other part, which we were quite excited about, is we thought we would, that's very hard to see because it's a clear contact lens with a little yellow button, but it's to make a contact lens that sort of simulated the device so that we could test people. If we thought they got an improvement, then we could let them try the contact lens, and it's a long wearing contact lens, and people can wear it for a week and can take it home and just see, does it actually help? And it's not quite right, and we've kind of modified the, the curvature, this, that, and the other. But a lady came in yesterday, the other day, and she said, "Oh no, I like the contact lens." Not everybody does. Some people that really find it irritable. But she says, I walked out of here and I went out to the shop and I could start to see the prices on the and whatever she was looking at, so she did like it. Some people say, no, yes, it does work, but actually just want the implant, or, but some do like it. And I think it's good in that you can actually let people take it home and go about their business. And you can also test each eye, you know, getting over, which one is really best, and what's best for vision may not be best for mobility, but this doesn't tend to affect mobility. So we were quite excited and very thankful to get the funding to do this. Um, so really the aims of the study were to see, did it improve vision? And I'm pleased to say, in the number of patients, and we have been a bit strapped because of COVID and little operating, but for the ones we've put in who already had cataract surgery, they did see a significant improvement. And one day said, "Oh, I'm back to reading my Kindle," so um, I think it definitely does. When you separate the cataract surgery from the device, then you can see that the device definitely does help. Very safe. It's a very soft, small lens. There's no problem getting it in. And then to develop the contact lens, I suppose, was our main aim, to see if we could either use it to test to see if we could get the best eye and the best result for the patient, or also maybe some patients would like to use it instead of, and there's no risk of surgery. So that was kind of the aim of that. I'm just coming to the end now. So you will remember the IMT at the very beginning, and one of the problems with it was, if you think of the eye, we would have had to open the eye from um, about 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock, if you imagine the clock. So it's a big opening for the eye, which no longer is needed in cataract surgery to get the device in. So what the manufacturers have done is they have created the new generation IMT, or they call it SING, small incision. And now this device folds in. It's incredible, actually, when you think of how large the original thing was. It folds into a syringe and you can push it through a much smaller incision. So this is the new kid on the block. Some of you, um, wherever you are, you may be invited there's a new study, and it's a post-marketing study. It means the device is marketed, it has its CE mark and everything, but it's called Samsara, and so many of these devices are being offered on a post-marketing research basis, and Belfast has been selected as a site. So we're hoping to start this. So it's still the same glass telescope. It's just got nice soft wings on it, and it goes in like a diver, and then the wings kind of spread out. It comes at a good price tag of £25,000. So it is expensive, but we know the technology works. But it does give this magnification of the whole visual field. So Samsara might be coming your way, depending where you are. So hate to say this, but size does matter, unfortunately. And on the screen, there is a yellow smiley emoji face with a pair of glasses on. And if that's with the red scotoma, I know scotomas or blind spots aren't red, but I thought it was easier to see. And it really blocks out pretty much all of the face. Down below is if you have something like some of the other lenses were magnifying 1.25, and you can see already that there's a wee bit more of the face visible. But then if you go to something like the IMT, which is 2.5 or 3, you can see that most of the face, I would say, what's that, 70% of the face is visible, because it's much bigger compared to the blind spot. So it depends really on what the level of vision is at the beginning, and I'm not going to really talk about Bobby Qureshi and the London implant, but there was really nothing wrong with the London implant. That was the 1.25, but it needed to go into patients who had mild to moderate visual loss because the magnification potential wasn't great. And that's okay if it is only mild to moderate. If you have severe visual impairment, then you really do need the IMT or the new Samsara telescope. Even the SML. The SML is good for vision between 624, which would be about sort of 3 lines down the chart, to just less than the top line. If the vision is very poor, it just doesn't have the magnification. So it's really picking the right device for the person. And I just thought I just put this in at the end here. Some of you may be thinking of, approaching someone for a device, and I think it's fine. They're all fine. It's just getting the right device. So questions to ask your ophthalmologist I've put up here. Which device is being offered? So I think you need to find out which one it is, and is it appropriate for your level of vision? What is the magnification of the device and the evidence for the device? So find out a little bit about it. If you Google any of those, then you get a little bit of information. There should be a simulator to check what improvement for any of the devices, and it depends which one. For the IMT, there's a handheld thing with a big knob glass thing on the end of it, and that, you hold that up, and they can measure how many lines of visual improvement you're expected to get, and it's pretty accurate. So, and for the SML, there are sort of glasses that you can put on just with different additions. So they should be able to tell you, and during the assessment, how many lines of vision, or how many letters. And I suppose the rule of thumb is, what helps? Well, we know that an improvement of 8 letters, which is about 1.5 lines, is meaningful. We know that from all sorts of trials, from the injection trials, that anything less than 8 letters or about 1.5 lines maybe doesn't help. So you're hoping to get at least 8 letters, maybe 2 lines, which is 10 letters, and so forth. So those are the kind of questions, but I'm happy to, think that's all I have to say. Yeah, so thank you very much for listening, and happy to take any questions.
Julie, thank you very much indeed. If you want to stop sharing your slides now, and we'll get you up in full glorious Technicolor. And thank you very much indeed. So questions are appearing in the chat, so we'll get to some of those now. I've just got a few questions to kick us off, actually, if I may. So
Sure.
this is about the one eye difference. So using one eye at a time. Is that just the way that the brain can accommodate this difference in vision? So you're going to have normal magnification in, so the television will appear normal size with one eye,
Yes.
but 3 times as big as the other
Yeah.
eye. So what happens? Do you close, open and shut one eye at a time, or does the brain do that for you?
Yeah. So that's the key question. And some people can do it automatically. They can just open both eyes and use each eye at will. And we don't know why that is. Others do have to cover. Because I would always say to the patients, like, be careful when you stand up and I take this patch off. And some of them would have to close one eye, and others would go, no, it's fine, doctor, off I go. And that is the thing we don't know, is that people who maybe have not had good binocular function at the beginning, maybe you lose it with AMD, who knows? But you can, as you say, close one, but you can get used to it. You just can never use both eyes together. That's with the big magnifiers. The
Yeah.
others, the SML, you can. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So some people can just do it naturally, and other people have
And if we could
practice.
only pick,
Some
if we
people
could only
can
know, we
only
can't.
know. Yes, that the brain is so strange, isn't it? So the other question I had was, macular degeneration is degenerative. So could you put this lens in an eye, but actually the disease progresses and actually becomes useless after a while anyway? Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, and that's when we're counseling people for these, that there is always, especially if it's end stage and it's scarred up and you're getting an IMT, which is the maximum size, that probably will last. And we did have a bit of a patient questionnaire after the Belfast study, and after 3 years, 60% were still using the device, which actually is better than handheld. A lot of the handheld magnifiers are in the drawer. So actually 60%. So I think at end stage where it's scarred up, it'll stay. If you get something when it's a bit, sort of earlier stage, it can progress, of course, but it is hopeful that the anti-VEGFs and maybe these newer drugs for the dry can stall. But you do have to be prepared for
Yeah.
that, of course.
And of course, they are very expensive. So are they available on the NHS yet? Can you get them on the NHS?
No, and that's the problem for, as you know, NICE have to approve these things, and they did look at it in I think 2000 and maybe 11 or 12, long time ago, and there wasn't enough evidence. You have to reach a certain level of evidence, and that's why I keep trying to do these trials to see if I can get the thing pushed up, because something like the SML is definitely affordable. It's not much more than 2 injections.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So, um, and you can do little harm with it because it doesn't have that off balance. And can be done obviously at the time of cataract surgery. So that's the one I think is probably most mileage, to be honest.
Certainly more
Yeah,
affordable, isn't it?
definitely.
Affordable. And this, you mentioned the CE mark and this sort of
Yes,
post-marketing trials that are done. So this is a big difference, isn't it, between biomedical drugs, therapeutics, and devices. So you can get a CE mark for your device a lot
yes,
earlier than you would be able to get a
yes.
marketing authorization, a license for a new drug.
That's
Does that
right.
mean that we don't, they basically they come onto the market before all the evidence has been gathered in the way that you would expect with a drug treatment? Is that
Yeah, I think they do have to pass the, phase 1, 2, and 3 trials, the safety and efficacy, but you don't need the huge numbers, because I suppose with the drugs, you can have systemic side effects. People can have other, heart attacks, etc. So I think you're quite right. It is easier to get them to market as long as they're shown to be safe and work. But the numbers, that's why I guess the numbers aren't great. You're not getting the thousands of patients that you would for the anti-VEGFs on the trials
yeah?
because it's not as
And my
stringent.
last question before we move on to everybody else's is you talked about 1.5 lines on the and 8 letters and so on. What does that mean in terms of if we, I mean, you're talking about, I think 8 letters and 1.5 lines refers to a much more complex chart than the chart we ordinary mortals go into and see in an optician's clinic, isn't it? So can you help translate that for us to what?
So that would be based on the old Snellen chart, as I call it, the one we all used to look at, not the big,
Oh, right.
the
Okay.
big, yeah. So it's on the if you can imagine in your mind's eye the old Snellen chart with the white and the black. So it would be about 2 lines on that.
Okay.
Yeah, so it would be meaningful, and most of these devices are getting at least 2 lines. So they do what they say on the can. It's just been disappointing that it hasn't become more widespread, but I guess it won't until it's available in this country anyway on the NHS, you know.
Yeah. Okay, that's really helpful. Okay, right. Lots of questions. I must get on
Good.
and stop forcing my own questions down.
Mm.
Somebody has asked about a trial going on in the north of England and elsewhere to implant an intraocular camera. Do you know anything about that?
Oh, actually, I don't, but I think as you were saying, earlier, there are these camera devices, but generally I hadn't heard anything recently about it. So no, I'm sorry,
It
I
was
don't.
it was there was a trial. It was in Manchester, wasn't it? Where they were trialing this, but I think it didn't go anywhere. Part of my memory is you may know better than I that the camera it was a problem of pixels. If you everybody knows what pixels are
Right.
nowadays,
Yeah.
don't they? And that in order to get lots of pixels, you had to have lots of electrodes in the brain, and too many
Yes.
electrodes cause too much heat in the brain, and it
Yeah.
heats the brain up. And obviously, there's a limit to how much brain heating you want to go on. So I'm not quite sure where it is either, but I think that's the trial that you're talking to. So
Yeah.
slightly different, slightly different. A question here that can the device be removed if it doesn't work? What happens if it doesn't work?
So they can be removed. The IMT, the previous one was much harder to remove because it had very stiff legs or arms holding it in place, but they can be cut and they can be removed. The other device, the SML, would be very easy to remove because it's so soft. You just flop it up and take it out. And some of the others, and I've removed two. So yes, they can be removed. And now with this new generation one, it's got softer arms, I suppose. So yeah, But there have been very few, even in the big American trial that had, I think, 282 patients. Interestingly, the people who wanted those removed were the patients with Stargardt's.
Yeah.
And the reason was like some of those people got 5 to 6 letters of improvement in vision, but they couldn't function. They walk, they're younger, they walk about faster, and they just found the whole mismatch of the magnification difficult,
That's
and that is the thing.
and when you remove them, what do? You put an artificial lens back in? Do you like a cataract operation?
Yeah. Yeah. So if it's one of the piggyback, like the Mac, it sits on top of the cataract lens, so you would just take it out and the cataract lens would still be there. So that's why it's a much lesser problem. The other one, then yes, you would have to put in a lens and either into the bag, which is where they normally sit, or on top of it. Yeah, you would replace it just as if it would be standard cataract surgery.
So a couple of times you mentioned about getting the right lens for the right person. How
Mm.
do you select this question here? How do you select
Yeah.
persons? And what criteria do you use to choose
Yeah.
the one?
So I think the simplest thing, and your ophthalmologist should be able to guide you, is they should know the magnification potential of each lens. And if someone has very poor vision, there is no point in putting in something that's going to just give a small amount of magnification. It just won't cut the mustard, basically. So generally less than 360. So 660 would have been the top letter on that normal Snellen chart. And if you just can't see that, but could see it from closer, from 3 meters, anything sort of beyond that would probably need the bigger magnification. And if you can see sort of from the third line, maybe to the top letter, or just about, then the SML with that twice magnification would work. So I think people have to take into consideration the level of vision, and also, I suppose the other thing is the simulator does help because it does give you a reasonable, feeling for what the vision will be. But it all takes time, you see, and this is the thing, and that's why I'm a bit nervous about all this in private practice. Not there's anything wrong with private practice, but it's the time needed to assess, needed to help with rehabilitation. It's not like a cataract operation where you just go out and get a pair of, glasses. It does need work, especially with a large magnifier. You have to practice, and that takes time and rehabilitation. Now, the IMT people, or the new Samsara people, they have built that into the post-marketing trial, but it does take, so that would cost a lot, I think, privately, not just the device, but all that care. You see, and
Yeah.
I think that's why it maybe hasn't taken off as well as it might, in private
Well, it's
practice.
very difficult for the NHS to provide that level of rehabilitation, isn't it? After
Yeah,
let alone the cost of the
yeah.
device itself.
Mhm.
Somebody's asked here about driving with the device. You mentioned that in some states in America they do allow you to drive with a device, but I don't think they would here. I don't know.
So yeah, I don't. They're definitely with the big magnifier, the the one that magnifies 3 times. No, although somewhere in the states I think they can. I don't know about the SML because it doesn't disturb distance vision. I think that's the problem with the other one. You've got a big lorry on one side, and the other eye. Whereas this doesn't. It really doesn't. And we've implanted the device into 5 people here, and they have no difficulty with distance vision at all. They're really happy with their near, but they're not bothered with distance. So I think there's probably no problem with that one. I don't know if the legislation has looked at it, but there really shouldn't be. In that, there's no mismatch really, because it doesn't come into play until you're right up to your face reading. In the distance, it'll have no effect.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's why I was so
it's a
keen on
product.
it. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
brilliant,
Um, yeah.
amazing. Um, uh, so they're not available on the NHS, but are they widely available in private practice? And what kind of specialist do you need? Do you go to an AMD specialist, or do you go to a cataract specialist, or a lens implant specialist? Who do you go to? Where do you go? And are they really? Every town has got somebody who will provide these lenses privately.
Yeah, I don't really know what it's like. I don't think many people are providing them in Northern Ireland, but probably a most retinal people will do cataract surgery, but they could then refer you. It's just picking the thing. Um, I just don't know. Maybe we should have a registry or something of centres, or to guide people, or what's available where. You know what I mean? It might be helpful, even if it's privately, but at least the this person, this center does this and would be suitable for this type of visual loss, etc. Maybe that's something we could look at, because it is a minefield out there, I know.
Do the manufacturers put suppliers on their website? Sometimes they do that, don't they? You can get it here and here.
Yeah, so sometimes I know in the IMT originally, yes, there was a thing of, and maybe once they do the Samsara, who are the people doing this latest one, maybe once they get, their trial along the way, they might be keen to do that. Um, yeah, maybe that's something we could look at.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Another question is the contact lens a fixed magnification, or it can be tuned? I think it's a fixed magnification.
It is fixed. It's fixed to be the same pretty much as the actual device. However, it depends on, so when the device goes in the eye, it's in the eye, and that's fine. When you put a contact lens on, if you've a bigger eye, different shaped cornea, so it's not just as an exact science, but we are working on it. It does work better for some than others, and it may be to do with the size of the eye, etc. Whether we could increase the magnification, so we've just done it to be, so the SML has a 10 times sort of, or 10 diopter, which magnifies twice, and we've made it the same. But that's a good point. I mean, when I look at these contact lenses, you can hardly see the blip in the middle. So why not, actually? Yeah, there you go. New idea. Because
And
we are thinking of maybe refining the contact lens, and why not? They make them, the custom make them for us. So that's a great idea. Thank you.
lovely, thank you for that one.
Mm.
Another question here, and I don't understand this question. Are these gadgets good with XLRs? And
Yes, I
is
saw it
both
coming up.
created at a young age, even when eyesight is pretty good? XLR, isn't that's a type of camera lens, isn't it? Camera
Yeah,
body.
not
Can
sure.
perhaps you
XLR. Yeah.
explain a bit more about your question, and we'll come back to that in a minute.
Mm.
Lots of our audience have coexisting conditions, so glaucoma, for example. What's the impact of lenses like these on people with glaucoma and AMD?
And AMD. So the bigger device, I mean, I don't think there's any contraindication, but I'd probably be a little bit hesitant because of the bulk of the thing and the fact that it pushes out into the angle. But the SML is such a, it's such a soft lens. It shouldn't really be a problem, and it goes in. You don't even need to open the eye very much, just about 2.2 millimeters, and just inject it in. So I think it would be, unless glaucoma is very severe. As you say, a lot of people do have both.
So the risk
It's
would be that it somehow increased the pressure inside the eye. Would that be the concern?
If with for the bigger device, maybe, and it is just a bit more awkward if you have to take it out, whereas the other one it's just like having another intraocular lens put on top, that's standard. It's so I don't see it as a contraindication. We've probably excluded people with glaucoma from the trial just because it's a trial. But I don't think there would really be any problem with the SML lens.
Okay. Here's a question. What is the lowest level of vision acuity when it works? I think you might have covered this a little bit. Perhaps you could just revisit that.
Yeah. So yeah, probably for the bigger device, so 6/20, 240, that would probably be the lowest that we would go with the bigger device. And that is, I mean, to put that into, that would be seeing what someone at 6 meters can see at 240 meters. So it is
Mm.
pretty poor. So it can the SML didn't work so well with the one person who had vision less than 3/60, but for this bigger device, it can do.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Now, there is, can, not sure I follow this one. Can SML be integrated into regular reading glasses?
The Yeah, so yes, so the not integrated, but it can be put into the eye, and then but you're getting two times, and then if you add on the reading glasses on top of that, yes, it will increase the magnification. So that's right, you can increase by adding more on top of your reading glasses, so you can get up to quite a bit of magnification, of course. Yeah.
Right. So you use both at the same time,
Yes,
the lens
yes,
and then your glasses on top.
yes,
I see.
yes,
Okay, good
yes.
question. Thank you very much indeed.
Good question. Yep.
Cataract surgery. We talked a lot about, this is like a cataract surgery operation. What if you haven't had cataract surgery? This is quite an important question, actually, because it's quite relevant to some of these lenses, isn't it? What if you haven't had cataract
Yeah.
surgery?
Yeah, so if you haven't had cataract surgery, then the bigger device, the Samsara and the IMT, they're available to you, which are not really available to people who have had cataract surgery. So there's a plus in that. If you have had cataract surgery, the SML can definitely go in on top. It's just a small procedure then, or it can be done at the time of cataract surgery. Interestingly, we've run into the problem with this macular society study that we've been doing. Hardly anybody who's had macular degeneration in Northern Ireland has had their cataract out. So we thought we would be able to find all these people who've had their cataract out, put in the implant, and that would be. But in fact, very few have had it done. So we've had to, test people, get them in for their cataract surgery, test them again. So that has been a bit slow. However, we're sitting good for the new device because it is for people who have not had cataract surgery. So there are pros and cons, and the lens that's available to you will depend on whether you've had prior cataract surgery or not. Mm.
There's it is so expensive, isn't it? I mean, one of the problems you mentioned, Bobby Qureshi, who was a London private doctor, and one of the problems was that this selection of patients was not really very good, and it costs a great deal of money. And people who are, fear that they're losing their sight will some people will do anything, won't they? They will spend their life savings on this kind of thing, because it's hope, isn't it?
Sure, sure.
And it needs quite a lot of careful thought, doesn't it, before you plunge into this kind of thing
Hmm.
when it's not available on the NHS, and
Yeah.
it would mean a huge amount of cost for some people,
Hmm.
life savings, isn't it, really? And
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
don't have that order uh, uh,
Hmm.
of resource available, do they? It's
Hmm.
quite a tricky decision, isn't it, to make?
Hmm. And that's sort of why I was very interested in the SML. It's cheap, €1,000 actually probably, and at worst does not much harm, and at best, does help. So I think unless the vision's very poor, it should have something to help. And then, as someone said, if you put the glasses on top, it adds to the, and doesn't have the awful mismatch of magnifications and the difficulty walking, which is, as people get older, definitely don't need. The lady that I showed, the bionic lady, she had like 3 or 4 lines improving, but she could no longer get on the bus on her own and get off because of the difficulty with this thing, and in the end she had it out, because of that. But we haven't had that with the SML because it's a slightly different device and only comes into play up close. So I do like it.
Yeah, that does sound really quite promising. Now we have a lady who's got a hand up, so I'm
Hmm.
going to bring you in. It's Brenda. Hello, good evening, Brenda. What's your question? You're on mute. Hello, well done.
I didn't mean to actually put my hand up. I must have clicked it by mistake. Thanks, thanks for that, Julie. It's all very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so you don't have a question, Brenda, for us. Okay, that's fine.
No, sorry.
That's all right. Not at all. Don't worry. Don't worry. There is a couple of questions about driving, and I think we've sort of covered the driving question. There is a question about, could you say a little bit more about the rehab that's required, and is
Right.
that delivered as part of the treatment, as part of the package, or do you have to go somewhere else to get that? For example, in Northern Ireland, for example, where would you go to have this rehab?
Yeah. So at the moment, we've only offered this on a research basis. So it is part and parcel of the whole thing. For the new Samsara thing, there are 6 visits scheduled for rehabilitation, because the manufacturers know this is key because of the large magnification. And that is the difficulty. If you go in and have that done in private practice and somebody puts it in and then says, right, cheerio, it's all healed, but you don't have the support, and that's kind of what worries me if they don't provide that package. Um, so, and the rehab is more important with the larger device and the more magnification because of the mismatch. With the SML, patients seem to be able to, with a few visits, just to check that they know how to use it. They've got the best glasses on top. So it is less intense, and that could be done even through, with lesser visits. So again, it would be easier to deliver and easier to practice. I think it's just the larger device and the mismatch in the images, is people just, if they don't use it, the brain will just cut it off and will just focus on the other eye. Whereas with the SML, walking about's the same, all that. So I think as long as people, practice reading up close, and you have to hold it up close, then it's easier. Yeah.
So I guess if you go and have one of these privately, one of the things to make sure is that there is the element, whatever is the appropriate element of rehab,
Yes.
is in the package that you're buying.
Yes.
Otherwise, you pay £25,000 for the
Yeah.
lens and discover it's another £25,000 for the rehab for you to use the lens. You really need to understand what's in
Yes.
the bundle, don't you? I guess really.
Yes. And that can be, it does have to be delivered by the surgeon, of course. It can be delivered by low vision specialists. And as long as there's somebody there, and some people need more than others, but as long as that's quite right, to ask, who would be available to help train me on this and to use this afterwards would be very important.
Another question, did you mention, I can't remember how much the contact lens type thing costs? I think
Cost. No, I didn't yet. It's not very much money, actually, to be honest. It was just for the trial. It probably would be a little more than standard contact lens, obviously, but we're about to analyze the data, and we have had a lot of people in through the contact lens arm, so I think it could be something that would be useful. And we made it long wearing. You can wear it for a week or two because it can be difficult to take in and out. Especially if people aren't just so dexterous. So, yeah, it wouldn't be. I can't see it being a lot, but yeah, I think we're going to move forward with another trial purely on developing the contact lens, and now we know we need to increase the power as well. Have a range of powers, yes, of magnification. That is also, yeah, something to add to it. So we're excited about that.
very good. There's a question here about somebody whose son has got a juvenile macular condition. Do the gadgets help if somebody has them implanted when they're a teenager, even if their eyesight in both eyes is still quite good? Is there any advantage in doing it before sight deteriorates, I think is the question.
Yeah, probably not actually. And, you'd have the risk of cataract surgery in an eye that doesn't have cataract. Young people, as I say, they were the people who had them removed in the Stargardt's people in the trials because they found that the walking about and was just too difficult. That's why we were keen on this contact lens because, you could try it on, sure. If it doesn't help, then you just take it out. And that was one of the reasons for trying to develop this, for that very reason, for people who were younger and had no cataract, and you weren't doing any harm, they'd be happy enough putting it in and out as well, probably. So I think that will be helpful if we can develop it a bit further.
Okay, great. Just a bit of clarification around the SML. I think it is SML, SNL,
Yeah.
SML.
Yes.
Cataract surgery before or not? We've lost the plot. Which one is this one? You need
We lost the plot.
surgery or you don't
So
need cataract surgery?
you can have had your cataract surgery and then it just goes in on top, or you can have the cataract surgery at the time if you're not in a trial, and you put in the lens and then the thing on top.
Right.
I think we're quite happy now that it does really add something, to having the cataract surgery, because certainly all our patients, once they've had their cataract surgery, they had this on top and they got additional benefit. So
Well,
I think the way to go forward is just to have both done together, if
mm.
if that's the thing.
So
Yeah.
having the cataract removed, of course, lets more light in, doesn't it? It improves vision potentially a little bit anyway by itself, doesn't
Yes.
it?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I think definitely, it's probably the way to go. And just maybe we're happy with that. We were just keen to make sure that, it did something in addition, and it does seem to, which is
Marvelous.
which is
We've
great.
got another raised hand. I don't know if that's an accidental raised hand or an actual raised hand. Ray, would you like to tell us whether you meant to do that? You'll have to unmute yourself. No, perhaps that was an accidental raised hand as well.
Maybe.
Okay, that's fine. Just a general question, because we're getting towards the end, but there is a question that came in very early from somebody, and this is not specifically about the lens, but somebody who has been having injections for 5 years. Sight is a lot worse, but hasn't been seen by a consultant for five years. That seems quite a long time not to have seen a consultant. Is that
Yeah, seems quite a long time. And I know in our unit we don't see patients at each visit. They get a course of injections and then things are reviewed. But 5 years does seem to be a bit of a long time. And also whether, I don't know whether there's cataract, as well. So nobody has examined, if nobody has examined the eye, might be worth asking, see what exactly is going on. Does seem a long time to me.
Yeah, so it'd be worth pointing it out the next time you go to the clinic and you think, actually, we all think that's quite a long time not to have seen a consultant, perhaps ask to do so. Okay, Ray's got his hand up again. Ray, is this time you really want to ask a question? Do so, please. No,
I think Ray had emailed me, I think, earlier, so I could maybe email me, and I can reply to the question he had maybe by email.
Okay, that would be lovely.
That would work.
Absolutely fine. Okay, all right, that's great. Thank you very much indeed. So where do you think it's all going, Julie? What's the potential here, do you think?
Yeah, it's been disappointingly slow for a lot of those reasons I said, but maybe the SML has got more mileage in it because it does work. It doesn't, and now with the anti-VEGFs especially, the level of visual loss is definitely less than it used to be before. So maybe it would be more applicable. I just don't know how we push it on, to be honest. And I don't know how you would have to get it, and maybe getting it through nice. It's a very inexpensive device, compared to it's little trouble. It, generally does what it says and doesn't cause much problem. I don't know whether we would need to maybe try because I was looking up the literature today and there have been a few more studies actually looking at it. So I don't know why it might be worth. We'll have to maybe think about that. The Royal College of Ophthalmologists come to Belfast and there is a session speaking about it. Maybe I'll float that to see if, because if it could get a bit of a push through nice, it's really the only way. And in the NHS, you could get rehab then through the low vision clinics, which a lot of patients are attending anyway. So maybe that's the way forward for that one.
There is a route for devices through nice, isn't there?
There is, yeah.
So perhaps that would be good. Just a final question then, just to recap, Julie, if somebody is thinking of doing one of these devices, just recap on your advice on what they should do.
Yeah. So I suppose the questions really are to ask which device and why. Is this device particularly suitable for my eye and for my level of vision? If I can't answer that question, maybe that's not a good start. And will it affect I suppose the other thing is, does it just affect the central vision or will it affect the distance? Because I think that makes the difference and makes it much more difficult to get used to. The one, so and needs a lot more training. I'm not saying it's not good, but it does need a bit more careful handling. There were a few other devices, but I think they seem to have disappeared off the market. These are really the principal ones. Yeah.
But you will have to go privately, and you will have to pay for it. That's and I doubt with insurance either, will it? It'll be cash, I guess, for most people.
So I don't know if the insurance covers it. Actually, I haven't thought of that. Maybe
Worth checking your policy if you're lucky enough to have one.
Yeah. The other thing is Samsara is, I think, the company. They are, I think they have some centres opening up in the UK, and certainly there's one in Dublin. So that might be an avenue for that device. But maybe we'll look at nice, will we, Kathy?
That's a good idea. We will look at nice.
Yes.
I think we will, because it'd be great if for people for whom it would be helpful, it'd be great to have it available on the NHS.
Yeah, Yeah, at the time of cataract surgery, you know, so you don't even have to have two procedures. It would add about 2 minutes to the procedure, you know, just when one lens goes in, you put in the other one.
Excellent. Well, let's work on that. That's great. Julie, thank you very much indeed. We've run out of time. I'm so sorry. If we didn't get to your question, or you've got some other question about your macular condition, you can call our helpline in the morning from 9 o'clock, 0300 30 30 111. The number's on the website as well, 0300 30 30 111. Now, next month, on the 16th of April, 7 o'clock, we'll be joined by an ophthalmologist and an optometrist who will just be here to answer your questions. That's all they're here for. Next time for My Macular and Me, 16th of April. So I hope you'll join us then. Julie, Professor Julie Silvestri, thank you so much for giving us your precious time tonight. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you to everybody who joined us, particularly Julie. Have a very good evening, everybody. We'll see you next time. Julie, thank you very much indeed. Good night, everyone.
Thank you to everyone. Have a good evening.